There we go. Okay, so it's 2020, and how's that going for you so far? It's challenging, right? If you're a musician, you've probably been wondering, what happened to my master's degree in music performance? Where's my undergrad degree in from the conservatory? What about the 10,000s of hours practice and performing my way up from one organization to the next? And now this, layered on top. So we've talked about some things. We had some really good inspirational, to quote Antonio, speakers earlier this week. And today we're going to launch from that point and talk about something that we call the 531 method of searching for your next job. And I think I'll launch right into that. But I think what you're going to find is a combination of being an endurance athlete and being an innovator. That's where this whole notion of endurovation comes from. We've discovered some processes and things that can be shared. I think you'll really get a kick out of them. So no time like the present. Let's get started. And before I do that, how about a show of hands, somebody? You can hear me okay, yes? Anybody? Okay, cool. Bueller, here we go. Thank you so much for that. So let's see if I can share my screen and tell bad jokes at the same time. Yeah, you could probably see my screen now, yes? How about another show of hands on the screen? And got another couple of people just joining. Very good. So Ryan and Sylvia, thanks for being here. Your timing is impeccable because you got here just in time to miss a couple of my really bad jokes. So well done. Thanks for being here.
Got it. I'm not gonna have the video on it because I'm rocking around with my dog and stuff. Okay.
That's great. There are some screens showing, so
Thanks so much.
if you can see the screens, that'll be helpful too. But you'll get most of it out of the audio as well. Fantastic. So look, yeah, I've got about 10 slides I'll show you, and they're not very detailed. This won't take a long time. And it's definitely not the 4,000 slide version of anything which some of us have been in, and it's not any fun. The 531 method, this is the 531 method workshop, and it's all about learning a proven process for finding your next job. You probably heard from me this slogan too about if you think that you're not looking for your next job, you're the only one that thinks that. You have to be always looking. You don't just have to be searching, and for goodness sakes, don't be desperate, but you have to be looking for that next thing and ready for it. And if you follow the principles that Rob Freer talked about yesterday of having a portfolio of stuff that is your career, and somewhere between what I call single digit, maybe 5-ish things that you do, well, you're always looking for a new pillar, and we'll talk more about that. So that's what today is all about. It will be about an hour and some questions, and then I've got something I'll offer at the end that I think you'll find interesting. So let me make sure, and if I do it this way, you guys can see my screen. Can you see all the way down to this bullet number 3, or is, okay, and very good. Thank you, Sylvia, for that, thanks. What are the goals? Well, there's really 3 goals. It's clarity, understanding, and ideas. The clarity on the professional challenges that are being faced. And in music, there's some particular ones like the venue closures, the social distancing impact to the groups like classrooms, general financial upheaval. The second thing that we want to focus on today is just understanding of this method as a solution and how it really works and what it achieves and why it works, and then ideas about what next. Any questions so far? Does this make sense? Yeah? Good. Okay, so the outcome we're going for with 531, and you might be wondering, why is this called 531? I'll get to that in a minute, but this is the outcome of using a process like this for your career and yourself and your direction is greater focus and clarity on your targets, allows you to establish and have and follow your own process of doing things, increases your success rate, results in a higher salary, gives you a better sense of accomplishment, and increased confidence in your future endeavors. I think that last one is probably the most important one, although Antonio, I bet I left one out. I bet providing inspiration will be in the next version of this, because I just love what you said earlier about inspiration, and it's really important, isn't it? So with any approach like this, the first thing to do is define the problem. Actually, the first thing to do is acknowledge that there is a problem. So now that we're there, the problem is venues are temporarily, we hope it's temporary. The Hollywood Bowl is closed. Concert schedules have been canceled for auspicious organizations like the LA Phil, the Pacific Symphony, and the Dana Point Symphony, and others. Classrooms are now off limits to any students or teachers, and audiences, clients, students, customers, they're all MIA. Sheltered in place, we call it. How are you supposed to do what you do if they're literally hiding in their basements? And hey, before any of this happened, it was already difficult, which we're not complaining about, by the way. Difficult is part of the reason we do what we do. Nobody on this call wants to do things that are easy, or you wouldn't be here. This is about helping you do difficult things and be better at them. So that's the definition of a problem. And what's not working is sort of the status quo. The old way of doing things is single-threaded, following their process blindly, like if you're a candidate for a job, only having one thing going. Let me stop on those three things for a minute and see, and Antonio, I might pick on you a little bit, is single-threaded or follow their process or only having one thing going. Can you comment on one or two of those that kind of resonate with you? What do you think?
I think the one that resonates the most is only having one thing going. Once that one thing ends, where do you go from there? So a constant, I guess a struggle for you, even for me during this time has been what is the most important things I need to focus on, and kind of make a periodical like stepping process on working on a couple different projects, but making it still organic and seeing literally all the different avenues that I can move around with.
Yes, I think that's a good observation. And then you touched on this, is that next bullet, number 4, if you only have one thing going, if you're not careful, you'll only start looking for the next thing when disaster strikes. And that puts you in a defensive position. You probably heard this phrase, back on your heels. It's tough, right? Where instead of sort of having something in process, you've been working the network, maybe you've even got something that you're thinking about doing as another pillar in your pillar of 5, your portfolio of 5 pillars, or maybe you're thinking about as the next thing, or you're actually actively talking and building a relationship. You don't have any of that because you've been complacent, which is that next bullet. Really, really dangerous. How about, let's see who else is out here. Janine, you had a couple of good observations yesterday. Are you listening as well as viewing? I see your picture. You have any thoughts on what we've just been talking about?
Yeah, I do. You asked me, right?
Yes, please go ahead.
Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know, I'm looking at my career, so to say, how, you know, kind of multifaceted. There are certain aspects. I have a performing aspect. I have a teaching aspect, and other venues too. And I was just thinking, you know, as this whole lockdown comes crashing down on all of us, that you know, I'm not exactly out there freelancing as much as I would like to be, as some of those who are just, you know, just making connections and knocking out gigs. But now, you know, that this all comes crashing down. Fortunately, I have the teaching aspect that's still kind of as an avenue, and I'm just kind of wondering, yeah, those people who you know just have their entire freelance careers just upended by this entire catastrophe, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like, you know, it really hits home. Just, you know, diversify, keep out there, and yeah.
Yeah, and let's see. I think I saw Janine unmuting as well. Janine, did you have something to add? Yeah. Am I?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going off Keen, through my, you know, short career, I've kind of been in both performance and teaching. So I've kind of, in terms of, you know, being stuck in one thing, I've been blessed to not have only, you know, either performing or just, you know, something. I've been able to kind of ping pong back and forth and have to those things going. But you know, following their process and kind of just getting stuck in what they're expecting me to do, or
Yeah.
what I, you know, putting myself, having expectations for what I do and getting stuck in that is definitely something that I struggle with. You know, my best friend always tells me how I kind of suck with change. I mean, I handle it in a very different way than other people. You know, to
Well,
others, it seems
nobody's
like I
that
have
good at
my,
it.
it seems like I have my stuff together with change, but I always freak out, and it's always something I struggle with. So
Good for you. Well, not on the freaking, but the struggling, because change is hard, and it's not actually all people have a tough time with change. It's not something that people are wired naturally to deal with well. And there are big consulting firms out there that have an entire practice called change management, and they have big companies, you know, paying them to tell them how to deal with it. So good for you if you've got a process. Another couple of points that leads to, and thanks for that, are when you're complacent about your current thing, oddly enough, it leads to boredom. And then you start to get discouraged, even though you're in a good situation. So you thought it was low risk. It turns out to be high risk. Why? Because you've gone down kind of banging your way down the basement stairs into the cellar from complacency to boredom to discouragement. And then it becomes high risk. We'll talk about that in a minute. The 531 process is not the status quo, definitively not. What's different about it? It's multi-opportunity instead of single-threaded. When you're looking for that next job or the next additional pillar in your portfolio, you're looking at multiple things, not hundreds of them, not even 20s, but, you know, 5. Oh, there's where the 5 comes from. And then we're following our process as well as theirs. We can't tell them, hey, no, you guys, I got my own process. I'm not doing what you asked me. That's not a good idea. I'm not advocating that. But you have to have your own overarching process, and it lets you deal with their situation in a better way. You have a portfolio of stuff instead of just one thing, and you have multiple pillars in your portfolio, and I recommend a single digit like 5 or 4 or 7 pillars. Don't have 12 pillars. For goodness sakes, don't have 20. But, and also here's ABL, always be looking, but not searching. There's a difference. Then it's a fine line, it's a balance, and let's replace complacency. Let's just avoid that. And boredom, thankfully, will be cured. You can't be bored while you're doing ABL. Trust me on this. Discouragement can be managed. You will hit discouragement. Rob Freer shared a couple of stories with us yesterday that the kind word would be discouragement of what happened. And yet, A, he's willing to share, and B, it made him better at what he does, and he managed through the discouragement and ended up in a good place. So and you end up managing risk. You can't replace it. If you try to avoid risk, you will have nothing, guaranteed. But if you manage risk, you're going to have a really successful career and really be happier and more successful in what you're doing and more successful with where you're going. Any questions on this? This has some very different concepts, I think, on this page. I'm sort of hoping there's some questions, but does this make sense? Anybody have a question or comment?
Hey, Michael, this is George here, and it's not necessarily a question here, but I think the pre-slide that you showed, you know, as I look through everything that's happened probably for me in the last month or so, I'm like, wow, you know, I could see myself getting into the status quo thing. And I think it's one of those things where it goes in a cycle, right? When you're done with everything, you start back up top again, you go through what you don't.
That's
really,
right.
I think the way you've got it laid out there is really nice.
Thanks. Well, so yeah, I think you just touched on the thing that's on the next page. Sylvia, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, this might be in the materials coming up, but I'm wondering if you have specific resources for developing a risk reward mindset that you recommend. Like, I'm familiar with growth mindset, like research, like Carol Dweck in an educational setting, but about like practical tools for cultivating a risk reward mindset for someone who's not used to thinking that way.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. Yes is the short answer. In particular, specifically speaking, the resource that I'm going to talk about on the last slide, which is a live lab, we call it, of actively pursuing your next thing, is how that happens. It's our belief, and my belief, I should say, that your mindset changes with results and effort. And it's I think, very difficult to sit in a room and even with a group of people and even with a teacher or mentor and say, okay, we're going to change our mindsets right now. It's very difficult to do that. What really works is to take the actions and then the mindset, the improved and different mindset as a result. So I'll show you that in a minute. Thanks for asking that question. It's really timely. So the 531 funnel visual is this. I picked out this funnel from somewhere, and it's got sort of a classic kind of a funnel that you might use to pour gasoline into the tank of your car, I suppose. And that's kind of what this is doing, is supercharging what the process is. And we call it 531, with 5 targets, 3 engaged, and 1 offer. This is the goal. So this bears a little bit of an explanation, and then I'll explain part of this, and I'll make a couple of points, and then I'm going to ask if this makes sense to you guys. This is a very different way of doing things. What most people do when they're looking for a new job or a new pillar is they take one thing at a time. And so they find out about one opening and they target that one, which is not really very impressive, frankly, as the targeting process. If there only is one thing, you're not really targeting, you're just doing the one thing. But what we just say is pick 5 targets, pick 5 organizations or companies with a specific position in each one, and commit to yourself that these are my 5 targets. These are the ones I'm going to go after. I'm going to jump to the bottom. The goal of this thing, by the way, is to come out with one offer where you have a written offer in hand that you can either accept or reject. That's the goal. And this is a funnel. 531 is a funnel. If you think about, probably 5 would fit in the top of this funnel. Midway down, 3 would still fit, and then 1 can pop out the bottom. That's why it's a funnel, 531. Antonio, I see you taking some notes. Thanks for that. Does this make sense, the 531, and kind of the numbers line up with a visual? Does that make a little bit of sense so far?
Yeah, it does. It actually works out the way that I wrote it on my page as well.
Okay, great. So the way this works is if you need one job to pop out the bottom of your funnel, click up one level to here and say, we think that it takes 3 engaged pursuits and selection processes where you are a candidate. To get one, you got to have 3 engagements. And by the way, this means you are a candidate means that they think you're a candidate, not that you think you're a candidate, not that you've filled out an application and sent it in, but where maybe you've actually met them or you've done an online interview and they've given you some feedback about how well or poorly you fit with their requirements. That's what a candidate is. It's not a concept, it's an engagement, right? And to get 3 engagements, it's our claim that you need 5 targets. And these are the ones you pick, and you pick them. They don't pick you, you pick them. That's an important distinction too, by the way, in the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things. The old way of doing things is you sort of wait around for somebody to pick you. No, don't do that. We pick them and then pursue, apply for a job and get engaged in as a candidate. And then you'll have one offer pop out the bottom. I'm going to make a couple comments about how this is different from human nature. But before I do that, any questions so far? So this goes against human nature, by the way. You've heard me call it counterintuitive. Human nature is 1-1-1, not 5-3-1. You get one thing going, and then you try to get engaged, and you do get engaged as a candidate, and then you start to ignore the other potentials that were out there because you think, wow, I love these guys over at ABC Company. I'm engaged. I've had 3 great interviews. This seems to be going great. So you start shutting down or even ignoring. They weren't even opened up yet. You don't have to shut them down. Anything else, thinking that you're going to go 1-1-1. And I would say and claim boldly, or it's not really that bold, 1-1-1 usually results in 1-1-0. And then you got to go back up to the top and start over again. One reason that happens is no matter how good a performer or faker you are, or actor, or actor, as my son Stephen would call them, you can't be that good of a candidate if you only have one thing going on. You can't act like you have other opportunities if you don't. And you actually are doing them a disservice at the opportunity by only having them as your only active thing. It's counterintuitive. How is it a disservice for me to only be serving them? Here's how. You drive them crazy as a candidate by being over-eager, over-energetic, and over-desperate, which, by the way, there's no other kind of desperate than over-desperate. You don't want to seem desperate or be desperate. So that wards away from this human nature thing of 1-1-0. The other human nature normal mistake is what I usually call 40-0-0. If you have 40 things here instead of 5, and some of us have made that mistake in the past also, if you have 40 here, you're going to have 0 here and 0 here. You just can't get there because you're not focused enough. I think you used that word, didn't you? Focus to make this 5-3-1 work. Now the magic too, by the way, is that it's not unusual for this to come out to be 5-3-2. People get so good at being a good candidate at the 3 level that they get 2 offers at the bottom. In fact, part of our process is how to turn 1 offer into 2, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Any questions about 5-3-1? Does that make sense now? Yeah? Cool. So what are the 5 phases of 5-3-1? And you might have one question like, hey, Mike, how come there's only 4 phases in the 5 phases? Well, the next phase 5 is on the next page. So it's coming. But these are the 4 L's. Listen, launch, land, and leverage. So the first thing, and you see some lingo here like module 1 and module 2. There's a form, or Sylvia, I think you asked this question. There's a structured 531 live lab. These are the modules that go into the lab. So in a listen phase, where it's all about discovery and exploration. And so we're trying to listen to what's out there, discover what's out there, and build our own list of 5. And then build our own plan of how to pursue them. That's what goes into the phase 1, is the listen stage. Phase 2, launch, is where we really establish contact with these 5 and generate 3 engagements. There's only 2 modules here. These are some pretty simple language and short statements, but this is not simple. This is difficult to do, but it's very doable. All of you all, as we say in the South, are good at doing things that are difficult, or you wouldn't be here today. But these things are difficult to do. It's a lot more possible when there's a process and a structure around launching this. And from there, we go to land. And module 1 and 2 of land, the land process is when their selection. That means we're going through their process. They have a selection process. We have a very well-defined methodology to win their selection. And then once we get one where they've actually given us an offer, that happens at the end of the land phase. Then we start balancing the offer against what our other, maybe we already have 1 job or 3 or 4, and we're trying to add a 5th pillar. Then we start to balance, hey, these guys want more time than I really have available unless I pull the plug on something I'm already doing. You might want to do that. Instead of trying to do 7 things when 7 is too many, pull the plug on 2 of them, which, by the way, pull the plug sounds like kind of harsh language, but there's a kinder, gentler, and graceful way to do that. And Ryan Dark probably knows this better than anybody, being a trumpet player, a freelancer, is the way to pull the plug on something, Ryan, is to give them one of your colleagues as a replacement for you. If you're still out there and can hear, Ryan, I bet you've done that hundreds of times, yeah?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. It's a careful and intentional use of a yes/no question. Thank you for that. And then,
no problem.
And then leverage is what comes next. And you might think, well, wait a minute, I got the job offer. Something comes next, Mike? Yes, something does come next. You decide some kind of a decision tree for whether, you don't have to take every offer that comes in. Okay, nod your heads or repeat after me. I don't have to take every offer that comes in. Again, that's contrary to human nature. You might think you owe them the right to take the offer that they gave you. You don't. I didn't do this intentionally, but I turned the same job down twice, 2 different times, 18 months apart. And the venture capitalist behind that organization loves me. He loved me after the first one, and then that second time I turned him down, he seemed to love me even more than the first time. And I was totally dumbfounded by this, but then I felt this obligation to be nice to them and try to do everything I could to help them, including calling one of my colleagues and sending them over there. It's just so counterintuitive to me about how that goes. So yeah, it's and what happens there is now you have a little bit of leverage. You don't have a lot of leverage. You have a little bit of leverage. And so we figure out a way to use that leverage to negotiate, to close, and gracefully exit either what I have been working, the place I have been working, or exit the other opportunities, again, by providing one of my colleagues as a replacement for me. And so that's a whole process. And this is how the 1, Antonio, at the bottom of the funnel turns into 2. There's some really specific, and we go over this in the module 2 and the whole negotiate to close thing, where you go back to your usually the one that pops out first at the bottom is not really the one that you want the most. I don't know why that is. It's just karma. It's a good one because you picked it, you put it up top in the 5, but it's not the one you want the most. So what we do is we go back to the one you do want the most in a very carefully structured discussion to say, hey, I've got a unanticipated, but I have a written offer, and frankly, I'd really rather work for you guys. Where am I in your candidate process? Am I one of the leaders or the lead candidate or a potential? I'm not sure, and I can't turn down a written offer on the hope that I might come to work for you guys. Can you give me some feedback? And one of two things will happen. They will say, gee whiz, I'm glad you called. You're our top candidate. You're in. Or they might say, gee whiz, I'm glad you called. We've been trying to figure out a way to tell you to get lost. So now we can say that and have a clear conscience about it. Thank you for getting the other offer and making our life better. This is what happens. And this is why, has 3 modules instead of 2. It's really complex and fun, by the way, because you have an offer in your hand. How fun is that to be able to, and it's not manipulative either. It's not, you're not doing anything untoward or bad for them. Remember what I said yesterday, I think, that always go into a search with the well-founded belief, although slightly not overconfident, slightly more confident than maybe you've completely earned the right to do, that you are certain that you are the best candidate that they could select. And so that gives you a lot more, and having a written offer in your hand, it makes it easier to believe that. Okay, phase 5, I was going to call this live and learn, but that sounds a little bit too much like throwing something over the transom and moving on. So I called it live and keep learning. And this is all about how to start your new job up without accidentally blowing yourself up in the first 60 days, which is really easy to do, oddly enough. Ryan Dark, you probably know some stories about people that have got the job as principal trumpet somewhere, and in the first few weeks alienated the rest of the orchestra and or the conductor or somebody by playing too loud, which means you're playing a trumpet, or not the right trumpet, or not really what they had, and not even trying to figure out how to fit in with the org. And it's harder for conductors and personnel managers to do now in the modern era of unions and all that stuff, but it's not unheard of to get fired instantly within the first 60 days for kind of doing what they told you to do. Ryan, another yes and no.
Definitely
Yeah.
true. I mean, my one of my first jobs was in San Diego Symphony, and I literally did have a 60-day trial before they gave me a year as principal, and it was a 60-day trial, and we went on tour for a month to China with like 4 different programs, and week 1 was Carnegie Hall, and then Ryan, so it was like a lot of stress, and they weren't gonna offer me the year until they tried me out for 60 days, like you said. So for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. And then I mentioned this before, refer one of your key colleagues to any opportunity that you turned down, and then transform those other 2 opportunities that you didn't get. And I would say even the other 4 of the 5 that you targeted, and maybe some of them went nowhere. And it's interesting how you can turn those into positive references for you. I've called those guys back who turned me down, as I mentioned the other day, much like going for the principal trumpet job, where you either get it or you get nothing. There's no second place in that audition. Same thing with a VP of sales job. You either get it or you get nothing. And I've gone back where I was the runner-up and came in second, which meant I got nothing, and called the CEO or the VC and asked them for help on something. And I was dumbfounded that they actually helped me, which made me laugh at myself a little, because I thought, why am I dumbfounded? If I didn't think they were going to help, why am I even calling them, I wonder. But it's really a positive thing. And we quit, this 531 was invented in the, what I'm now calling the last financial meltdown. And another IU graduate and me, we created this in a lab to help people look for jobs. And a lot of them were not very good at searching for jobs. They're really good employees and good people. And we quit counting at 38. We helped 38 people get new jobs, and a lot of them were terrible at being candidates, but really good at being employees. So we know this works, and we just quit counting at 38. So connect with me in these areas, please. I'll show you my connection information as well on the last slide. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Facebook and a little bit of Twitter, and we've got some other connections going too, but these are kind of the primary ones. And then Sylvia, here's the shameless self-promotion, frankly, for a lab that's being offered that is a 3-day live session with you and your opportunities to what are those 5 L's again? Listen, launch, land, and leverage your next thing. It's not, today we covered the concept and the strategy and the structure and the architecture of this, but in this lab, we'll be doing your project and your new job. And I'll just sort of tilt my computer for a second. Over there on the wall stuck to the mirror, that is some of what we do. That's the actual working documents and structural stuff that goes into 531. We've got it scheduled for June 23rd, 24th, 25th, as a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And there's a fee for this that's $1,950, which might sound like a lot, but I'll share with you a couple of numbers and then see if you guys have any questions. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that someone's looking for a $100,000 job, and you can do the math if it's 50 or you're actually looking for 500, whatever. But let's just say 100. That's $8,400 a month. Using 531 will get you more dollars a month on your new job, and your new job at least a month sooner. So if we get you an $8,400 a month job together, we get it with you, you're going to be $8,400 ahead of the game at the end of this game. That pays for this in spades. But better than that, you'll probably get more than 8,400. Like, let's say you got 9,400 as a result of using the leverage I talked about and being able to negotiate because you've got a tiny bit of leverage and a leveraging position and a really good coach. You'll probably end up with more like 9,400 a month than 8,400. And so those two things drive a lot of ROI, because $1,000 more a month for the rest of eternity and $8,400 more because you start a month earlier. We think that really, really pays for this $1,950 fee for the 531 Live Lab. Sylvia, I think you asked a question about mindset that kind of launched into this. I'll send you all a copy of this, so I think I might pop off of the screen and go back to the full tile view. But Sylvia, could you ask a question or make a couple of comments about this to get a little discussion going? Yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to pick me for this one.
I think I do, especially since you challenged me with that. Go ahead.
Well,
You want to think about it?
the idea of $100,000 a year job in the field that I've been in for the last couple of years is so outlandish to me that it's hard for me to engage with the offer that's on the table. That's my response.
That's a great response. Thank you for that. Can I comment on that a little bit? And by the way, if you hear a dog barking a little bit, or if you wonder why I'm leaning over to this side, it's because my dog also has a question. I'm not sure what it is yet. But your question is superb. Sylvia. Thanks for asking that. And hang on one second. I'm going to let the dog out. So I have 2 or 3 answers, and if you'll indulge me, I'll kind of go through this a little bit because your question is so superb. It's really the question I was hoping someone would ask. If 100,000 is too much, how about if I just chop that in half and call it 50 to make the math point work? Can I do that? Would that make a little bit of sense? Yeah. So let's call it 50. In that case, that is a $4,200 a month job. And we think that spending $1,950 will get you $4,200 more by getting this new job a month earlier than it would without that process. In addition, we think that it'll turn your $4,200 a month into $5,200, which is $1,000 more per month for the rest of this year and the rest of eternity, perhaps. That really provides the ROI to pay for the $1,950. More important than this, though, we think we can challenge the concept that anybody, yourself included, and anyone else on this call or anyone, is sort of stuck at the 50K level. We think we can help boost that more into a 6-figure realm. And I know that's challenging. I know that might even sound scary. But if we shoot for 50 and do the couple of things I mentioned, like use a little bit of leverage to turn 4,200 into 5,200, you're on your way. And we're convinced that this methodology works. And we think we can help you get where you're going. And it works at any level. It works at 100K, 50K, 25K. It works at 250K. It works at all of these levels because it's all working with human nature and psychology and confidence. And you had it right in the first place, Sylvia, mindset. It's all about mindset. So how does that sound? Does that boost your confidence a little bit?
It's still significantly over what I make in a month right now. So
Well,
just
good.
having the capacity to make the investment, it sounds great. And I wish that I could do that, but it's.
Well, we can talk one-on-one about that and make sure it works one-on-one for you and for your particulars, okay? And you've got my information. I'll show you some of it on the screen too. But you're asking exactly the right question, and you're asking the question I was hoping someone would ask. So thanks. Antonio, what do you think? Anything to share?
Yeah, so for me, my next job is actually, I'm going to be going to West Virginia for a master's degree, but I have a graduate assistant position over there. And so being learning about something like the 5-3-1 method is definitely something that I can kind of keep in mind and move forward even after I go, after the 2 years are up and I move back to either West Coast, LA where I'm from, or East Coast, or anything else that I do too. So it's great to have at least knowing that there's an outlet for some kind of process after everything's said and done.
Yeah, indeed. And so what we should do is we'll get you into my network and let's stay in touch, because what I'm hearing you say is that you'd like to do this, but you're not ready to do it right now.
Exactly.
And that sounds great also. I might pick on Ryan Dark again and also see if I'll ask him something other than a yes/no question. Is as we kind of close out here our session today, and thanks for the thumbs up, Ryan. Ryan, do you have any kind of overarching comments or guidance for the group or for me about how we can really make this resonate and put ourselves in a position to really thrive going forward? Any thoughts?
I'm walking my dog. I'm sorry if it's loud out here.
No, it sounds good.
Well, I don't know. I've been listening in. I think everything you're saying makes a whole lot of sense. I think confidence is key. I think making sure that you have like, you know, really a clear idea of what you're providing, like what service you're providing and how you're going to provide it. For instance, like the Trumpet Forward summer festival that I put on, you know, I invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on my camera equipment, audio equipment, lighting, graphic design, website design. I can't tell you what else. All of my artists that I hired, you know, I went out and put like $8,000 without knowing if I was going to make a single dollar back, you know, because I thought, you know, if I provide a good product, then people are going to see my good product and know that that's what they're going to get delivered to them. So, you know, I think if you like let your product speak for itself and like what you do and your artistic quality or your teaching quality, if you want to, you know, if you upscale your presence and upscale your product, like people are going to see that and notice and follow, you know.
Right on. Those are important concepts. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were thinking, but that's what came to mind at the time, and I'll get out of the way now.
What I was thinking is I was hoping, thank you for that. What I was thinking, Ryan, is I was hoping to hear what came to mind at the moment. So thanks for sharing that. That's really good. And we might, I think I'll pick on Andrew Rodman and see if Andrew's got any feedback, and then Heen, and then we'll kind of close out. George, you might have some closing remarks, but Andrew, are you out there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I really like what you're sharing with us here, Michael. And I think moving forward through this pandemic, we're all going to be looking for jobs, like you said. And I'm thinking using this method, I'm going to have to be. It's going to be a lot more than 531 for me. I'm going to be, you know, looking all over the place. Like I was kind of doing that before. I wasn't ever pigeonholed, I think, into one.
Right.
Specifically for me, I know you through the classical music world, but I was always having my fingers in other pies. You know, I was always playing jazz, playing all these other styles. So
jazz, good heavens, really, Andrew?
yeah. So yeah, thanks for sharing this. And I did actually have a question for you. I wanted to know. I did not get to catch the session with Rob Freer, and is there going to be a way for us to access those sessions that maybe some of us missed these past days?
Yes, there is. I haven't done that part of the process yet, but that will be coming, and thanks for asking that. Yes. And now the other comment you made, and kind of a question in there too, I think I would speak to is, what did you say? Yeah, we're all going to be looking for new jobs. You're so right. And then you said something about that you're going to have much more than 531, which I bet you are, but probably not 40. Probably, I would suggest use 531 in different channels, perhaps. You might have 5 pursuits going on for jazz things and 5 orchestra things. And this replicates in that way. You can manage that, 5 teaching targets, you know, but I am sure that, like, I'll pick teaching for a minute. If you need one new teaching job, if you start off searching for 40 of them, I guarantee you will end up with 0. So we can talk about that. And then my last point I wanted to make sure I accentuated is what we're doing with this 531 Live Lab is taking you and your particular situation, even including jazz of all things, Andrew, or any other discipline that might be semi-questionable and involving people of and ill repute like trumpet players. The purpose of this lab is to work through your process and use some techniques and tools here for your particulars, and not to pull everyone into like kind of a prefabricated home, if you will. It's really a live lab to work on your stuff. So if that makes sense, and you and I can talk about this and how it might or might not work for you going forward too. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. And I'm really, the reason I'm kind of making fun of the jazz connection is most great trumpet players, starting with Bud Herseth, where Bud Herseth was a big band trumpet player before he was principal trumpet at Chicago Symphony, FYI. So, Ian, what do you think? Have you got any questions, comments, resonance?
Not so much question, but comments. Just yeah, it really hits home that if we keep on the same route that we're on before, and this is kind of like a big wake up call to all of us, is to and even for myself to diversify. And I keep telling to just conversations with my other colleagues is that the current moment like we fortunately have a lifeline with our teaching avenue, but as the situation kind of grows on, we're not going to get any more students out there because if anything, we're only going to keep what we have or lose some.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that again, that's one thing that's beyond our control. And so the only thing that we do have control is to actually, diversify, to find other avenues, to find other things and get out of our complacency. If we're always still set in the same routine, like you said, we're just, heading for disaster or just waiting for disaster to kind of come crashing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Thank you for that. And one thing I should probably point out too is and I forgot to mention that one of the things that I do is executive coaching, one-on-one coaching. And so I'd like to offer the discovery session that I do in executive coaching is always no charge to clients. So everybody that's here today and anyone else that's interested in having a discussion about how the 531 method might work for you, if the 531 Live Lab might work for you, that session with me, 45 minutes real time on Zoom on a discovery session, that's a no charge item and I think high value item. And I really would like it if please reach out to me, send me your email address, send me a couple of suggestions on what time would work for you and what day, and let's set something up. And I'm invested in everybody's future. That's part of what I'm doing. Ryan Dark mentioned this, and I probably haven't spent as much money on microphones as he has, but I sure have spent a lot of money on the other parts going into this, and sweat equity too. And you've heard this from me before, a lot of the stuff that goes into the 531 method is learned through experience in the field and the trial and error, mainly error process. So there's no reason anybody on this call needs to make all the same errors and mistakes that I've made already for you. You can leapfrog over that and make some of your own mistakes. It's all good. But yeah, please set something up with me one-on-one and let's talk about this. And Antonio, even though I know you're not quite ready yet to do what I'm talking about, I'd still love to do the one-on-one with you now, and we can figure out when you might be ready. If it's some months, weeks, years, or even decades down the road, I expect to be here and would love to participate. George, any comments as we're closing out here? I hope this is valuable for you.
Absolutely valuable. Thank you, Michael. It's always good to just hear other people's perspectives. So thank you, everybody that spoke up and gave some insights. Everybody comes, I come from a very different walk of life from, I think, I was told this was going to be a bunch of musicians on it. So it's always interesting to see that at the end of the day, we're all still human, and we also have that same goal of trying to get out there and finding something, and being just a productive member of society is what I like to call it. So thank you, Michael, for having me.
Thanks for being here. And I'm going to leave the Zoom active here for a few minutes in case anybody wants to follow up on chat with each other. But I'm going to turn my video off and audio just in case the dog starts barking again. But thank you all for being here. Really, really good session. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Michael.
Michael.